Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Unexplained and Unsolved podcast. Today, me and my co-host Victor will be reading more stories from the r/nosleep subreddit.
Now, before we get into this video, we would just like to say thank you to everyone who tagged along since the last video. We are sitting at 1.3k views with 68 likes and 101 subscribers. We also want to say thank you to everyone who left the nice comments on the last video. It really gives us motivation to put out more content. We just like to see how we are doing in the perspective of the viewers, because we may think that we're putting out a good video, but if it's not good in your guys' perspective, then obviously it's just not a good video.
And with all that being said, let's start the video.
You know when you get that feeling that someone is watching you? I don't really know when it started, but in the beginning it was only a slight eerie feeling every now and then when the door closed of my room caught my eyes. Usually, I always keep my room's door shut as I don't like looking at the pitch black darkness of the hallway. But last week on Monday, while I was scrolling on TikTok at night, too bored to fall asleep, out of the corner of my eyes I briefly saw something in the crack of the door. Something like eyes staring at me, but also not. I tried telling my housemate about it, but they kept shrugging it off about how I'm just imagining things and I must have dreamed it. The next day, Tuesday night, I started hearing some wet footsteps approaching my room, stopping for a moment before leaving. I didn't think too much about it, assuming it was my housemate, and casually brought it up in a conversation, asking if they wanted to ask me something last night before receiving a strange look from them. They told me that they stayed out a little late with some friends and came back around 6 a.m. Ah, yes, of course they did. Thankfully, nothing happened on Wednesday, despite my efforts of staying up all night in fear and paranoia. But Thursday morning, I heard someone walk to my room and knock on the door. Thinking it was my housemate, I opened it only to find no one. I kind of just stood there in disbelief before just ignoring the event, passing it off as a mishearing things. On Friday, it happened again, but this time I was accompanied by a voice that sounded like my housemate saying my name. I spoke through the door asking what they wanted because honestly I was too comfortable to get out of bed, but they said nothing else, so I assumed they just left and didn't press the matter. Yesterday, I suddenly heard my housemate banging on my room door, begging me to open the door and screaming for help. I jumped out of bed and ran to the open door out of panic, but as soon as I touched the doorknob, I don't know why, but I just froze, as if my instincts told me that if I opened the door, something bad would happen. For a few minutes, I stood there petrified by some unknown fear with my hands on the doorknob until the banging and screaming suddenly stopped. It was only then that I remembered that I don't lock my room door. I slowly walked back to the bed, grabbed my phone to call my housemate to ask if they were okay. They replied sorta confused and said yeah, and that they were just chilling in their room. I asked them to come to my room and they opened my room's door and asked what was wrong. I didn't know how to explain it to them and ended up just crying in relief and fear. They stayed with me for a while to comfort me, and we ended up just watching some sucky 19s horror movies for the rest of the day. Today, 1 hour ago, I heard a hoarse voice asking at the door of my room that doesn't sound like my housemate, nor anyone I know. It said, "I'm sorry, open the door," followed by light knocking every 15-ish minutes. It's been going on for a while now, and I started thinking I should just give in and open the door. Maybe everything will stop. Nothing happened the first time, so maybe I'm just overthinking this. Should I open the door? So that story was a little short. It was posted by Furry Sugar 3. It's called Open the Door. And so since it's so short, me and Dakota are going to do 2 narrations apiece. So here's the next one. There's something in the Mississippi River. This story took place in 2013. It was the beginning of summer, and me and my brother West had just gotten to my Uncle Matt's house in Mayersville, which is a couple miles from the nearby Mississippi River. Uncle Matt gave us both his famous Matt hugs as we entered. After we unpacked, we had a few drinks since West finally turned 21 last month. Since I'm only a year older, but he's drunk on several occasions. We just chatted about the nonsensical stuff, played pool, and all the fun stuff. The next day, we left to go camping since our Aunt Melissa was away for a business trip. As we were driving, my uncle told us that there may be gators and bull sharks in the Mississippi River. But then he told us he had seen something much worse down there when he was our age. He spoke of a 7 or 8 foot tall lake monster that resembled a more monstrous version of the creature from the Black Lagoon. "You got to be pulling our chain," Wes said. "No, my boy, it's all true. I saw him when I was fishing for a walleye. When I was reeling in my catch, it actually had the balls to try to take my fish. I thought it was a bull shark at first until I reeled in the head of the walleye and saw them glowing eyes under the water. I almost shit myself when I got a better look at it. My brother still didn't really believe it, and he gave Uncle Matt the benefit of the doubt, but I was quite intrigued. My uncle was 6'4" and lifted weights every day. The guy's practically built like Vin Diesel. He is usually never scared of anything, so if this thing managed to do it, it must have been the big deal. When we parked at the camping spot, we walked the trail down to the small beach connected to the river. We unpacked our camping gear, fishing gear, and Uncle Matt's M14 rifle, which he kept in a special case. After setting up our tents, me and Wes went into the woods to go get firewood. When the dust set in, we were cooking the 2 walleyes we caught. When Wes was cooking the potatoes, I heard the water splash near the shallow part of the beach. "What the hell was that?" I said. "Probably a catfish," Wes told me. The splashing then happened again before it stopped once more. "Hope that ain't a gator," Uncle Matt said. "No way, not out here," Wes said. We were then listening to the song Asylum by Disturbed while we were eating. When we finished, I shot my girlfriend some pictures of the walleye we caught before stuffing the phone in my pocket. Wes went to take a piss out in the bushes while the rest of us ate. "Hope there ain't no snake in them bushes," Uncle Matt said, sipping a beer. "Funny," Wes called out. I then decided to take a dip in the river since it was hot as hell that day. After taking off my white tank top, I changed into my bathing suit before jumping in. My Uncle Matt was reading a hardcover copy of the book It while Wes was playing a game on his phone. When I went underwater for the second time, I felt something like a hand tightly grab my left calf. I opened my eyes in the blurry water to barely make out some sort of humanoid fish thing with sharp spikes on its back. I kicked it as hard as I could several times until it finally relented, then it gave a good kick to what I assumed was its face. I darted out of the water, screaming like a banshee towards Uncle Matt and Wes. I noticed 3 big but not severe fatal cuts on my calf. "What the hell happened?" Uncle Matt asked. "There's something in the water," I said as he grabbed the first aid kit out of the tent. "What are you talking about?" Wes said. "I saw it. It wasn't a bull shark. It was something else. Some kind of fish with arms," I said. Uncle Matt comes out with the gauze and antiseptic. He cleaned and dressed my wound before wrapping my calf into a gauze. "Did you get a look at it?" Uncle Matt said. "Sorta. It was the size of a man, probably bigger, and it had these spikes on its back," I said. "Shit, it must have been the monster from the story," Wes stated. "Oh, now you believe it," I snarked. "Well, what the hell kind of fish leaves a precise scratch like that?" Wes replied. My uncle then stands frozen, looking at the river. I and Wes go to see what's wrong. Then we both freeze in fear as well when we see the 2 glowing eyes of a yellowish-green color from under the water. They were completely devoid of any irises or pupils, just practically cod zombie-style eyes. "What the fuck is that?" Wes asked, now sweating. Uncle Matt runs to retrieve his rifle. He fires 14 rounds into the water to scare it off. When the waves in the water from the bullets settle, the eyes were gone. "Looks like it left for now," Uncle Matt said. "What if it comes back?" I asked. "We got weapons, so if it comes back we can hopefully light it up," Uncle Matt answered. "If it can't go on land, I guess we'll be good," Wes said. When we clocked out for the night, I kept watch for the monster with the AR-15 since it was the only gun we had kept besides the .357. In hindsight, I have no idea why we didn't leave right then and there. I guess we just wanted to prove we were the 3 badasses who weren't afraid of shit. After 20 minutes passed, I got bored and decided to pass the time by playing Angry Birds. When I went to wake Uncle Matt for his watch shift, I heard a loud, alligator-like hissing noise coming from the bushes where we pissed. However, the small growl that followed the hissing was nothing that an alligator would sound of. I slowly and cautiously walked up to the bushes, gun tightly grasped in my hand. I turned on its underbarrel flashlight and I used the night vision scope that was attached to see what was in there. I aimed the flashlight at the bushes, and what I saw I would make even the toughest folks shit themselves. It was a large grayish humanoid creature with fin-like webs on its forearms. It also had webbing on its 3-toed feet. It had a tail resembling that of a catfish, black spikes on its back, 3-fingered hands, and sharp white claws, and a maw filled with pointed teeth, as well as yellow eyes with black slanted pupils, like that of a snake. Its left eye looked like a scar from a blade underneath. It hissed at me and opened its mouth, clearly feeling threatened. "Holy fuck," I yelled, as I fired nearly the entire magazine at it while screaming my lungs out from the fear. I must have hit it because it shrieked in pain and darted right past me on all fours back into the water. I ran back to the tents to see Wes and Uncle Matt up with machetes in hand, lowering them with relief when they saw me. "Are you okay, Roger?" Uncle Matt asked, concerned. "Yeah, I managed to get a good shot at it and it ran back off into the water. Let's just get our asses back to the house before that SOB comes back," Wes said, as we ran to the car with nothing but our weapons, leaving all the other shit behind. We sped the hell out of there as soon as we got into the car. Uncle Matt called the police about what happened while me and Wes had a couple more beers to process what happened. The next morning, we went to retrieve the stuff. Several police cruisers were already there. Our tents and everything else were mostly untouched, but all of our food was practically gone. And our coolers were completely trashed with huge claw marks unlike anything I've ever seen. "Better that been eaten than us," Wes said. "Yeah, no shit," I said. We talked to the sheriff for a little bit about what we saw. He said he wouldn't have believed us if not for the blue-colored blood they recovered. "Blood?" Uncle Matt asked. "Yup, whatever you shot definitely wasn't no gator or anything around here. In my 38 years in the force, I've never done a case like this. If you guys promise to keep quiet about this, I got some cash waiting," said Sheriff as we got our tents and fishing gear. They seized our destroyed coolers for evidence, which we absolutely didn't mind as the sheriff wrote us a massive check. The number I won't disclose. After the incident, we haven't talked about the river creature as my uncle called it since. Present day, and we still haven't seen or heard any of it to this day. Now I'm 28 and married to my beautiful wife of 5 years. I only fear one thing. What if there are a whole species of those things lurking in the river somewhere, waiting for their next unsuspecting meal? I don't know what the hell that town is hiding, but I preferably don't want nothing to do with it ever again. My advice? If you're camping by the Mississippi River, please have some protection. Anything. I'll update you guys if anything else happens. Now, I really liked that story, and I liked how it was a lot longer than the last story. So now, Dakota's gonna be reading 2 separate stories.
This next story is entitled, "We Never Open the Door When There's Only One Knock. Please, just let me in. It's getting cold." The voice was familiar, only older than I remembered. Very close to detail. "Layla, please." Using my old nickname was a nice touch as well. Of course this had to happen the 1 week my parents left me alone. They hadn't gone on vacation for years. I practically begged them to get away for a while, for their own good. If I called them, they'd come right back, but I don't think that would have helped me anyway. Besides, I wasn't an idiot. I heard the knock, and I would not open that door. When someone comes to your house, they will ring the bell or knock a few times. Most people like to play it safe and simply use the bell, and then you would open the door as you normally would. But never, absolutely never, should you open the door when there's only one knock. It was the very first thing we were told when we moved to this neighborhood all those years ago. There are a bunch of rumors of people disappearing or suddenly dying after opening their doors, though they all supposedly happened before we lived here. I never believed in it, not even when I was little. This town was simply insane. Most people here were a little eccentric and unusual. Well, that's what I believed, until I heard my lost sister call for me, after the one loud knock on our front door. "Please go away," I whispered. Even after all those years, I recognized her voice, and then when I heard it, I jumped right up, ready to open that door wide. But I knew it wasn't her. I'd looked through the window. There was nobody in front of the door. I don't know how much time had passed before I finally grabbed my phone and called Max, who's not only our neighbor, but one of my closest friends. "She's here," I said. I knew I wasn't making much sense, but I didn't know how to word my thoughts. "Who? Where?" he answered. "Ruby." Silence. What? Max started speaking but stopped. "She knocked." That was enough information for him. "You didn't open, did you?" I shook my head, which of course he couldn't see. "I'm coming over now, okay?" I'm not sure how many minutes passed, but Ruby had stopped asking me to open the door. "Hey, Lainey, I don't think the bell is working," I heard Max. "Maybe they screwed with it." I swallowed. "You could knock." There was silence for a little while, followed by one loud thud. When I didn't open the door, the sound of Max starting shouting loudly, "Open the fucking door." His voice became louder and louder until it hit a frequency that almost made my eardrums explode. I didn't move. I didn't speak, and finally, the doorbell rang and the voice became silent. Slowly, I got up from the door to look outside. This time it was really him. The last time I saw her, we had the biggest fight of our lives. We were sitting in the living room with tea that had already turned cold. I don't open up about Ruby often, but hearing her voice today really messed me up. And all because stupid Jack. I rolled my eyes. Max smiled. "A boy?" I shook my head and laughed. Jack was a stuffed toy in the shape of a pumpkin. I'd never told Max about the fight. In fact, nobody but my parents knew about it. I loved that damn thing. Won it at the Halloween carnival. When Ruby saw it, she begged me to give it to her. She cried for hours because she hadn't won it, and even when my parents said they'd buy her another toy, she wouldn't stop. She wanted mine. Well, She wanted to be just like you. It's sweet. I nodded. Ruby was a year younger than me, but she used to act like as if we were twins. She wore my clothes, played the same sports, and always wanted to hang out with me and my friends. When I think about it now, I think about how adorable it was. Of course, back then I found it insufferable. I sighed. For days I took Jack everywhere with me, even to the bathroom. It was probably just out of pettiness, but that toy became everything to me. So when I came home from school one afternoon and saw that Ruby cut it in half, I screamed like never before. She only looked at me with big teary eyes. Max put his hand on my shoulder. Come on, lady, siblings fight. It's normal. I saw you with her, though, and you were a damn good big sister. I nodded. Of course, I knew it was just some stupid fight between kids, but if I could turn back time, I'd give her every shitty toy I owned. This happened 5 years ago. Ruby would be 16 now. My parents had tried everything for years to find her. I believe the only reason we still live here is that they never entirely gave up the hope that she'd come back home one day. Maybe now she was, just in a different way. Do you think that I'm losing my mind, Max? He raised an eyebrow. I think you lost that a whole while ago, he joked. No, I'm serious. I mean, is it not possible that I actually heard her earlier? He shrugged. I mean, did you hear a knock? I don't think it was actually her, though. Max and I used to make fun of the superstition. When we were younger, before Ruby disappeared, we once played Ding Dong Ditch. After a few houses, Max decided to knock once at the door of our neighbor, Miss Teleski. Someone saw us, though, and Max got the biggest lecture of his life from his grandpa. My parents weren't happy either, but Max was grounded for 2 months, during which his grandpa told him all sorts of horror stories from this town. I don't think it was her either, but I do think it was someone mimicking her, or trying to, I said. For what it's worth, I think it was smart that you didn't open the door. Maybe we're all just a little crazy, but better safe than sorry, right? Max offered to stay the night, and I immediately said yes. We got the air mattress and watched movies until I started to hear him snoring. The good thing about Max is I never felt awkward around him. He regularly stayed over since we were little, especially often after Ruby was gone. Having him here really helped against the silence. My mind became easier and my body heavier. Real thoughts started to mix with dreams. I was beginning to fall asleep, and then there was another knock. It came from the front door downstairs, but I heard it loud and clearly. My heart started racing just like it did this afternoon. Max, did you hear that? I whispered, but he didn't answer. Layla, it's dark. Please come and get me. Ruby's new voice cried from outside. Max, please tell me you hear this. I looked over at him, but he didn't move. Finally, I collected the courage to get up and turn the lights on. The eyes of my friend were wide open, but he didn't speak, and he didn't move. I ran over to him and tried to shake him, but his whole body was stiff. Only his eyes moved. Let me in. The voice from downstairs screamed. I didn't know what to do anymore. Max was clearly awake, but it seemed as if something was holding him back. Almost like he was having sleep paralysis, but with his eyes open. They're pulling me away, Layla. Please help me. I don't know what happened then, but I immediately jumped up and ran downstairs. Some kind of instinct kicked in. Maybe it was her. Maybe I could pull her back inside. But if this was really Ruby, would she also be the one doing this to Max? My hands touched the cold door handle, almost moving as if I was in a trance. I have Jack. They fixed him, Layla. We don't need to fight anymore. Those words pierced through my body and woke something up inside of me. I stepped away from the door and walked back upstairs, passing my room, where Max was still lying still. But I didn't stop. I walked to the next room, Ruby's old bedroom. Everything there looked just the way it did when she was still here. My parents could never change it. Everything was still the same, and Jack was still placed on her bed, where I put it 5 years ago, after I'd sewn it back together. They almost got me.